Good morning, gearheads, and welcome to the Speed City F1 pre-race show for the 10th round of the 2025 Formula One season, with the Canadian Grand Prix just 1 hour away. Happy Father's Day to all you fathers out there, and this is Jon Massengale, and happy Father's Day to you, Bob Varsha.
Thank you very much. I'm glad you remembered that. Not all of my kids have yet, but I expect a phone call imminently. Yeah, it's a nice day. It's nice to talk to your kids.
I am excited because I'm having dinner with all three of my children later today after we get off the air. So I am lucky. I'm blessed to have all the kids here in Austin this weekend. So
I'm gonna do the opposite. I'm gonna go see my kids starting next Saturday. I'll be talking to you from Baltimore and Jackson, Wyoming.
Nice, very nice.
Yeah.
Well, you don't hear Jonathan Green's voice because he's actually in Indianapolis. He's doing some work up there. But he was excited for the possible mayhem at turn one with George Russell and Max Verstappen. He said Arvid Lindblad is standing by if Max's point situation gets him in trouble. So, and you know what, Bob, that's got to be where we start today because George Russell had a phenomenal lap yesterday. And we'll talk about that. But that puts him on pole with Max Verstappen right next to him on the front row with only 1 point away from a race ban that puts Max after last race. So, yeah, that's and this turn one should be exciting.
Definitely. And that qualifying session is still with me. I was watching some of the TV coverage and the announcers were looking at the times and noticing that everybody was just, a tiny fraction of a second apart. So they're trying to guess how many drivers would be in contention for pole. And as we saw at the end, 4 different drivers had a shot at pole. All were on provisional pole at some point in the last half minute or so of qualifying as they came across the line one after the other. And that tells us a lot, I think. A, naturally, the field is tightly bunched, but B, the track is still evolving. You want to be the last man out there in qualifying. Now you are. So now what do you do with your tires? It looks like, from what Pirelli is indicating, most all of the teams, you can count on one hand the number of teams that don't have 2 sets of the hard compound available. The 2-stopper looks to be the way to go, but you just never know with a track evolving this quickly. Somebody may opt for a 1-stop, and it might just work if you go with medium and hard.
Well, I want to, tires are going to be a big discussion. In fact, George Russell talked about that and why he did so well yesterday with the coolness of the ambient temperature. But we got Chris Medland on the ground in Montreal. And the first thing I want to ask him is, Chris, how's the weather?
Oh, it's lovely. Although right now, again, I'm joining you at the point that I walked down a stairwell inside with no windows to enter the paddock. So that's why it's a bit echoey right now, but also that I'm not looking at the gorgeous sunshine that is awaiting the other side of 2 doors for me. So it's a warmer day than yesterday as well. The temperature's really going up at the moment. And now I'm outside and it's gorgeous. So the sunnies need to go on, I can say that. It's let me down slightly, I must admit, because in my preview kind of pieces and when I did some briefings for a sponsor as well this weekend, one of the talking points I had was the weather, because I thought it could be mixed. We had it last year and it looked unsettled when we were heading out here at the start of last week, but it's just cleared up and been gorgeous the whole time.
Yeah, and I looked at the ambient temperatures at 76, which was like 73 during qualifying, 74. But I guess the lack of clouds and the direct sunlight is going to heat up the track as well, Chris.
Yeah, I mean, there's a few clouds around, but not many at all. It's pretty much clear in that sense. And there's not too much of a breeze as well. There was yesterday, less of that today. But yeah, it's the fact that we're earlier in the day, so you've got fewer shadows going across the track. You've just got more of that surface cooking, basically, warming up steadily. So it's going to be a bit more challenging, I think, for Mercedes. The interesting thing I've seen, actually, looking at the forecast as well today, and I'll double check it while I'm on now, but was the fact that this isn't the hottest part of the day, even though it is 1 p.m. and we'll be starting at 2. But actually, it'll continue getting hotter as the race goes on. So the hottest part of the day is scheduled to be at 4 or 5 o'clock. And it's looking like we've still got a few more degrees to go up yet. So in that sense, it could actually help Mercedes slightly if it's marginally cooler at the start of the race than the end, then when the car is heaviest and full fuel and on tyres that are going to be worked harder, then that slightly lower temperature might help them a tiny little bit, especially with the lower grip as well, when you're not going to get the help from the track. And as the race goes on, even if it gets a bit warmer, as the fuel burns off and the car's a bit lighter, it might be just a little bit easier for the team then to keep its tyre temperatures under control, which has been a problem they've had. But I'll admit, I'm slightly clutching at straws for Mercedes there. I do wonder if it's not like roasting by any stretch, but I do wonder if it might be a bit warmer than they'd like today.
Bob, Varsha, I want to ask you, I don't remember a team that is affected so much by temperature. You know, we've talked, it's very, very evident. We've seen it multiple times with Mercedes. When it's cool, the car seems to be like 10% faster. That's probably an exaggeration, but it seems like it, I guess, because the field is so tight now and the lap times are so tight. But I don't recall this ever being the case.
Well, I think it's happened time and again over history, but I don't have the facts to back that up. But it seems to me it's logical when you've got a sport where everybody has to design and build their own cars, that you're going to come up with 10 different iterations of aerodynamic packages that will react to the ambient conditions. And the weather gets hot, that means the air gets thinner, if you like, lighter, and the aero doesn't perform quite as well as it does when the air is cooler and more dense. And apparently, you know, Mercedes and their aerodynamicists have leaned into that, you know, the cool, denser air. And whether they expected it or not, they're finding out that in hot weather, it just doesn't work as well. And other teams may have that same problem to some degree or another. But, you know, when you're on pole, when you've got drivers competing for a championship, when you're one of the big hitters, as it were, then then it becomes a bit more stark and we talk about it more. But no, I don't think it's really that much of a surprise given, the individuation of all the teams up and down the pit lane.
Well, I'm sure it has, and you're absolutely right. In this sport, it's too much about, and that's one of the reasons why I absolutely love it, the engineering side of it. But Chris, right. I want to jump back to the racing side of it, because when we fired up the microphones here, I know you were just joining us. You may have missed it, but I was getting pretty excited about the fact that Max Verstappen and George Russell are lining up on the front row, especially after the Spanish Grand Prix, what happened. Max ramming into the side of George. And this is not the first time. I mean, over the last 3 or 4 seasons, we've seen so much interaction and conflict between these two guys.
Yeah, we've seen plenty, haven't we? It's like you say, it's the fact that we've just had the most recent incident and I guess episode between the two of them. It's just what revs things up even more. I did have someone say, actually, it's almost too good to be true. At the race after, they're now the top two, starting on the front row, fighting for the win. And not only that it's George on pole, and therefore Max has to get past him. So Max is the one who has to be aggressive. And you expect something to happen, and therefore we can only be a bit disappointed that maybe it won't. I think something will. Sorry, I'm getting told to move some tyres that haven't come through yet, but I appreciate that. I was just running onto the grid and getting out the way of the Ferrari mechanics with their tyres there. They're starting too far back to be a factor into turn one between Max and George. But yeah, the fact we're talking up so much, some people are then saying, well, then quite often when we do that, you end up with a damp squib and it doesn't actually happen. I just feel like the mindset that Max Verstappen's in at the moment says he's going to do something, that he's going to want to get his elbows out. He's going to be aggressive. He wants to shut everyone up and say, look, I don't change the way I go racing. I'm still better. I'm still got the racecraft to go and overtake George, take the lead, win this race. And I think today, the Red Bull is going to be the quicker car out of the two, or more likely to be the quicker car out of the two. So it's actually going to mean it's important for him to get ahead of George, to get clear before the McLarens come in. So if he doesn't get it done early, it could really hamper his chances of winning the race. And therefore, he needs to be aggressive too, even disregarding all the history he has. So it's perfectly set up. And I think there's just going to be all eyes on that top two when the lights go out from everybody here sitting in the grandstands as well. They know that is potentially going to be the most tasty flashpoint of the race.
Yeah. Well,
and looking at it from the other perspective, George Russell's going to have an even bigger task keeping Max behind him if he can get through turn 1 and 2. because this track does allow passing. And at the same time, it has those close-in walls and big curbs and stuff. So it's going to take aggression for Max, or anyone else for that matter, to pass, but it's also going to take aggression to defend. And boy, oh boy, that's where it comes down to the drivers and their respect for each other and their skills. It's going to be fun to watch.
Yeah, absolutely. That Red Bull's quick in the straight line as well, we've seen. I think a bit quicker than the Mercedes in the straight line. So it's going to be a proper tussle between those two, certainly in the first part of the race. And I just think George as well doesn't really have the what's the right term I want to use? I was going to say calmness, but the ability, I think, to just wave Max by thinking my race is trying to hold on for a top 5 because the car might not hold on. At the start of the race, he's got to try and keep Max behind because he's got to see if the car will perform in these conditions. But also with the McLarens then maybe having to get through Max Verstappen, that gives him a bit more of a buffer too. So, yeah, I don't think anyone is going to be taking it easy today.
Yeah, you know what, Chris? You just said something about the calmness of George Russell in his post-qualifying interview yesterday. He talks about how badly he wants a win and how he needs a win. So, Casey, if you're ready, let's play. Yeah, let's go. Let's hear this clip from George Russell right after qualifying.
Hey, George, congratulations. I'm not sure I've seen you punch the air that hard after a lap. Just tell me how you're feeling right now.
Yeah, it was crazy, to be honest, because I've never finished a lap and had sort of goosebumps afterwards in my whole career. And this circuit's a real challenge to drive. It's bumpy. You've got to be so committed. And the car and myself, it just felt on rails. And it just kept giving me more lap time. And I'm watching my steering wheel. I'm like, all right, I'm 1 tenth up now. I'm 2 tenths up. I'm 3 tenths up. 4 tenths, 5 tenths. I'm like 6. Like, how is this even possible? It was one of those laps. It was like, to be honest, even right now, I don't know how it was possible, but I found 6 tenths from the beginning of Q3, and that's why it was, really, really quite something.
Does that allow you to dream then about tomorrow? Because it feels like it's been a bit of a miracle today. What can you deliver tomorrow?
We're definitely in the fight, no doubt about it, but we know the strength and weakness of our car. We perform when it's cooler and struggle when it's hotter. The race is at 2 o'clock tomorrow. Quali, by the time we did Q3, it was after 5 o'clock. So, little things like that make a big difference. If a cloud comes out, that's good news for us. If the sun's there, it's not good. So, there's so many of these variables that we're playing with. But this is validation of, let's say, of the inherent problem in our car. We'll take the positives today, but that aided us to pole position. But we're not naive to the fact that for the majority of the circuits, what makes it so good here today or in Vegas is what makes us struggle at the other tracks.
Got you.
Thank you.
Best luck tomorrow.
All right, I think the part that I was remembering was actually in the post-qualifying long-term press conference, the long format, where he talked about he hasn't had a win and really needs a win. What I'm leading up to, Chris, is I'm just thinking maybe you're right about he may not be able to, control that in a Piastri-like fashion and could be really aggressive. But I also want to talk about Max Verstappen's face in that press conference, because and whenever George mentioned it, the points and the conflict they had in the Spanish Grand Prix, Max you could see he was just what daggers in his eyes, right, is the phrase, right? And you could see
I don't need to hear it again. It's really pissing me off.
Well, that was a little clip that Casey played, but I want to play the full interview. I'm calling it the full interview. This is a little tongue-in-cheek, but this is Max Verstappen in the post-qualifying press conference.
Max, the penalty points thing, I don't need to hear it again. It's really pissing me off. It's such a waste of time. It's very childish. Really annoying, this world that we live in.
We got special permission to play a few seconds of that, actually, because it was mostly just Max talking about how, he's completely upset about this, even just the mention of it. And Chris, I know you've seen that, with your own eyes.
Yeah, big time. I sit next to Nate Saunders from ESPN that we've had on a few shows before this week. And while I was on air with you guys yesterday, Nate was in that press conference and asked Max later, because nobody wanted to ask Max any questions because of the way he did respond to that topic. And they didn't want to then go and feel his wrath, basically. But Nate, at the end of the press conference, like, Max, sorry, got to ask, but that situation, does it change anything about the way you need to go racing? Does it impact, does it add to the pressure at all? And all Max did was kind of put on a sarcastic smile and do double thumbs up in like high in the air back at Nate. And that was it. There was no like worded answer back to him. So the other two drivers did kind of say, no, we won't change anything. George actually, quite interestingly, said, I think Max is going to be harder racing against tomorrow because he's going to want to prove a point to everyone. And you know, he doesn't change his approach. But I think it shows a weakness, actually, again. It's something we've seen from Max before, but the whole incident that happened in Spain is because he lost control of his emotions. And whether he was intending to hit George or not, he said frustration got the better of him. Now, he's already showing signs of that frustration getting to him immediately when people are asking questions. And as we said on yesterday's show, you don't want those questions. Don't hit someone. Don't make that mistake in the first place. Right. Given the fact that he has, like, take responsibility for that. You're going to get these questions because you create the situation.
Right.
Yeah.
You do your job, I'll do mine. And mine is to ask questions.
Yeah, exactly. All right, guys, we got to get a quick break in, and you're listening to Speed City F1, and we'll be back after these messages. All right, let's check in on, see who's on YouTube. Carl is here. He said, good afternoon, Gearheads. We're going to be a great race. We hope so, Carl. Well, thank you for joining us. Joe says, weather looked great in the Academy race. Yeah, good. I'm glad you watched that. Kevin Kelly said, you see the Lawson penalty? Yep, we'll talk about all these. Todd Dauber, I so badly want Max to overtake Russell somewhere on the first lap. Exclamation point. By the way, happy Father's Day from downtown Kansas City. Thank you, Todd. And let's see, TW's here. He says, I made it a little late. He said, hit the like button. Thank you, TW. And he said also, George's job on the line, contract not renewed yet. That's a good point. That's a good point. Looking good right now, isn't he?
I've got some interesting context for that, actually, if you want to chat about it later.
Yeah, let's do. Let's chat about it on air. He might be a tad too aggressive to start, take out on the start and take out half the field. Carlos Jr. wins. Carlos Sr. for president. That's great. And Kevin Kelly, Max is always driving into other drivers in iRacing.
Oh, really? Oh. I don't iRace, but that's interesting to know.
I watched a bunch of that during the pandemic, but I haven't really watched much of it since.
There's been a few incidents I think that have been flagged up where he's been involved in something. I think he did take someone out at one stage for being unhappy with the way they'd been racing each other.
Yeah. How long we got, Case? All right. Let's see. I'm just getting my live read ready here. Let's see. Any other comments? Joe says, if I'd done what he did, I'd be humiliated too. You know, maybe that's part of it. Maybe there's some embarrassment. Who knows?
Maybe. Yeah. He doesn't want to relive it.
Yeah.
Which is natural.
All right. Coming back.
Yeah.
I'm George Russell, and you're listening to Speed City.
Welcome back to the fastest hour in radio, Speed City.
In business, they say you can have better, cheaper, or faster, but you can only get to pick two. What if you could have all three at the same time? That's exactly what Cohere, Thomson Reuters, and Specialized Bikes have since they upgraded to the next generation of the cloud, Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. OCI is the blazing fast platform for your infrastructure, database, application development, and AI needs, where you can run any workload in high availability, consistency, high performance environment, and spend less than you would with other clouds. How is it faster? OCI's block storage gives you more operations per second. Cheaper? OCI costs up to 50% less for compute, 70% less for storage, and 80% less for networking. Better? In test after test, OCI customers report lower latency and higher bandwidth versus other clouds. This is the cloud built for AI and all your biggest workloads. Right now, zero commitment. Try OCI for free. Head to oracle.com/formula. That's oracle.com/formula. All right, guys, we're about 40 minutes from the start of the Canadian Grand Prix. We got Chris Medland on the ground in Montreal. We got Bob Varsha with me from his studio in Atlanta. And gentlemen, I think probably the next thing on our list is let's talk a little bit about we've talked all about George and Max starting on the front row, but I want to talk about the McLarens. The championship leader, Oscar Piastri, is a qualified third, is going to be starting on the second row. And you know what, Casey, if you can get that clip ready, we'll hear from Oscar Piastri now because he sounded very Oscar-like. Let's hear from him.
Oscar, considering how difficult this morning was, is that kind of a reasonable result from qualifying today?
Yeah, I'm honestly pretty happy with that, which I haven't said about qualifying third this year so far, but yeah, it's a decent result, honestly. It's been a tough weekend so far. Like you said, this morning was tricky again, and I felt much more confident in qualifying, which was good. You know, there's the question mark of whether we should have run a medium or not, but honestly, I'm pretty happy with how things have gone in the end. So, yeah, that's all.
Have you got any kind of inklings as to why maybe it's been so tricky so far? And does that pace in quali, at least when you pulled it back a bit, give you hope for tomorrow?
I mean, there's definitely been some question marks. I don't think we fully understand, you know, why. The problems with the car have been pretty clear, but it's not been the easiest to find a solution to them. I think in qualifying, things felt a bit better. Still not perfect, but considerably better. And ultimately, I think we were back into the position we should be. It's just that, you know, Mercedes looked very quick this weekend. Max has looked quick. We've potentially looked a little bit slower, and then you add in the medium tyre, and it raises questions, and you know, it's very hard to know. So I think we were back into our normal or relatively normal position. Just that the competition's been very strong this weekend.
Well, good luck tomorrow. Thank you.
Yeah, Oscar.
John, actually, I just want to jump in off the back of that because I've got Mario Isla here from Pirelli. And Mario, Oscar was there talking about maybe some of the, dare I say, struggles McLaren have had in finding pace. But one thing they did differently in qualifying in Q3 was run the soft tyre, not the medium, for their final Q3 run. How much difference do you think was in that?
That's a very difficult question because we know that the C6, being a new compound, is probably a bit more difficult to use, and teams struggle to understand or to find the real potential of the C6. That's why, because C5 and C6 are so close, some drivers prefer to use the C5. It was interesting because now they have more medium and more hard than usual for the race, and all the combinations are possible. And that is making the race, I believe, more interesting.
So do you think we could see the C6 used even at the start of the race?
No, I don't think so. It's even hotter than yesterday. That means higher degradation usually. So medium hard or medium hard medium are the quickest. One stop is visible, but it's lower, and there is no reason to have a one stop when you spend only 18 seconds for an additional stop, and there are a lot of possibilities for overtaking. So these are the two, in my opinion, most popular combination.
Should that lead to some more aggressive racing too then? Guys out on track, fighting each other, overtaking, pushing their tyres hard?
Yeah, obviously if they target a two stop, they can push a lot more. They don't have to manage the tyre too much, and that's good. Also, we don't have a lot of data on the hard because only Sauber use the hard, and clearly the data are limited, but they know the compound from past races, so I believe they have enough information.
We look forward to seeing how it goes. Thanks for your time as always.
Boy, it's a good thing Mario Isola and Davide Valsecchi are not calling this race because no one would be able to understand a word of what's going on.
Do you want me to paraphrase what he said?
Yes,
Sure.
please.
Yeah,
in English.
Sure. Okay, so no, I was going to try my best Italian. So he was saying that the difference between the soft and medium was very, very small over one lap, and that it depends on driver preference whether you were comfortable with the soft or not. So anyone who was, maybe went with it. Anyone who wasn't, maybe went with the medium because they knew what they were going to get from that tyre. But he said the way teams have kept back so many mediums and hards, it gives them lots of strategic variation opportunities today. It thinks it could be a two-stop using just the medium and the hard, but you can do it in different ways. And only Sauber have run the hard tyre in practice. So everyone else is kind of going into it a bit blind on that front, but they should have enough data from previous races where they've used that compound to have a bit of an understanding. But yeah, he was saying that it's opened up the potential, and he thinks it'll be a two-stop from most because you can overtake it easily here, and it's a short pit lane in terms of time loss.
Right.
So he thinks we'll see a faster race in that sense. Drivers don't have to save tyres; they can push hard, and they can get aggressive overtaking each other. So Good signs, I'd say.
Good job, Chris.
Yeah, I'd say so.
I'm glad you got Mario, because the tires have been such a big discussion this weekend. So I'm glad. And it's surprising that only Sauber's used the hard tire. I hadn't really thought about that. Chris, are we saying that all the teams are going to start on the hard tire?
No. I think most will start on the medium because of the launch off the line that you get initially, the improvement from that. It is warmer, but the hard is still that little bit longer to warm up. And the medium still would last long enough, I think, to give you flexibility in your strategy. But I think we'll see pretty much everyone go medium and then hard, certainly at the front end of the grid. And then the second stint, or the final stint, sorry, the second pit stop, they'll kind of make a judgment call based on how each tyre performed in the race up to that stage. If you're out of position, I think you're more likely to start the hard and see how long you can run it, mainly because it might give you an opportunity with a lucky safety car or something to jump up a few positions. But again, the 3 tyre compounds here are the softest 3 that Pirelli bring. So the hard is still not that hard in reality. I don't think we'll see people running all the way to the end of the race on that. They'll still be looking to make 2 pit stops, more likely, unless they get a safety car at the right time.
Yeah, that's a good point. At a track that eats tires, take your pick, that hardest compound here would be the softest if Pirelli brought out their 3 hardest compounds for the race. I hope I explained that significantly. And the other 2 good points were the short pit lane and the short lap. I mean, this is in Austria. It's Spielberg territory in terms of the length of the lap. 70 seconds for George to come around and take pole is a very quick lap indeed.
Yeah, no doubt. Hey, I want to play one clip from Oscar Piastri after qualifying 2, and obviously he did not have a great qualifying, and so he talks about that. Let's hear from Oscar Piastri.
Oscar, considering how difficult this morning was, is that kind of a reasonable result from qualifying today?
Yeah, I'm honestly pretty happy with that, which I haven't said about qualifying 3rd this year so far, but yeah, it's...
Sorry, guys. I said Oscar Piastri. I meant Lando Norris. Let's hear from Lando. Sorry.
Lando, you look so quick in FP3 and in those first parts of qualifying. Just talk me through where it kind of went wrong, and not the specific moment, but just why you maybe didn't get it together in that final part.
I just pushed a bit hard and too many mistakes, that's all.
In terms of the car and the ultimate performance of it, was it kind of where you'd expected it to be, and does that give you hope tomorrow?
Yeah, I think, good enough, for a top 3, probably not good enough for pole. Hard to know how much was maybe the medium tyre performing that little bit better, especially when the grip comes up. Maybe the medium's a touch better, but that was a gamble. It's a risk, and I guess every team has their own opinion on what they thought was best, and clearly we didn't think that was going to be better. But we did what we did, and I just didn't put it together when I needed to.
What do you think you can recover tomorrow?
That's tough to say. I think we're maybe a little bit quicker than some of the cars ahead, but not all of them, so top 5 is probably a good start.
Good luck tomorrow.
Bob, I feel like just listening to him, obviously he just got through with a bad qualifying, but he had gained some confidence back after the beginning of, slow start in parts of the season there. Feels like he's lost some of that.
Well, everybody hates to have a bad day, and Lando was lamenting many mistakes on his push laps, which is kind of easy to do at Montreal because the track evolves so quickly, because there are no other races held on this track. So it's, it can be tough. And Lando, came up short. So we all know that he's really his own worst critic. So actually, I thought that interview was a little bit upbeat for him, considering he's going to start 7th. And he said, I can get a top 5 out of this. So, I mean, he's not even thinking about, worst possible scenarios. He's thinking, how far can I go? I'm going to go forward. Much like his teammate, Piastri, with George and Max ahead of him, starting from P3. I think they're going to be in sort of a waiting mode to see what happens in front of them. When you see the likes of Lewis Hamilton and co flying off at turn 2 and going through the runoff area because they didn't hit their break points for turn 2, anything can happen. And that's one of the nuances of this track. It's a great track. It's great for the fans coming from downtown Montreal, but the walls are right there. It doesn't get a lot of use. It's a very strange animal for them in lots of ways. But I think Lando will be okay.
When's the last time you've been to Montreal? Go ahead,
sorry,
Chris.
I'm trying to jump in. I think I found what was surprising about Lando, though, was how well his weekend had been going. He'd been so strong. He'd looked so good throughout practice that I backed him. I changed my fantasy team to have him in as the lead driver over Piastri because I just thought Piastri really did look like out of the sorts and struggling. Lando far more comfortable and confident. That was a big blow, I think, for him to, even in that state, with the upper hand, not put it together. So hopefully he'll come back from that. And on that note, I'm going to disappear for 5 minutes to chat some TV people.
All right, Chris, thank you. In fact, I just fired up F1 TV so we can watch Chris and see who he's interviewing or what he's talking about. But we're going to take a break, and when we come back, we'll be less than a half an hour for the Canadian Grand Prix right after this. All right, let's see what's going on. I keep having to hide somebody advertising their F1 stream on our chat. And now they've taken up the whole screen. I can't see anybody else's chats.
Who's that?
Oh, it's just some spam. Hold on, let me see if I can get it back going here.
Yikes.
I had to close it and reopen. Oh, here we go. Now it's letting me at least scroll up and down. I think it blasted everybody. Nobody's made any comments lately because it took up so much of the screen. It's, one of those pirate F1 streams that are out there.
Guys who don't know squat.
Well, no, it's not even that. They take the Sky stream and they put it out on YouTube. So,
like I said,
that's exactly. It's no good for anybody. I know some people love that, but it's not.
Catch the end of Le Mans?
I did not.
Ferrari.
I watched so little of Le Mans. I mean, my son wasn't in it this year, so I didn't spend a lot of time watching it, but I got all set up to watch it and had it on multiple different networks. I actually ended up probably watching the most on Motor Trend because I have YouTube TV, and I just had it on the background. Right. It wasn't even. I didn't even had the volume down, so I didn't get to follow any of it. But I saw that Ferrari won for the third year in a row. That's awesome.
But Ferrari was like 1, 3, 4 or something like that.
Yeah,
they just really pounded everybody.
I don't know. I know Kevin Kelly was watching it. I don't know how. I know the Cadillacs. Oh, they're showing the groundhog on F1 TV. I know that Cadillac started on pole. Yeah, I know. Everybody calls them a groundhog. I know it's technically not, but yeah, Cadillac started on pole, and Penske had another penalty. Oh, geez. Yep. All right, here we go. Coming back.
Hi, this is Max Verstappen, and you're listening to Speed City.
Welcome back to the fastest hour in radio, Speed City.
All right, welcome back to Speed City F1. Right now, with zero commitment, try Oracle Cloud Infrastructure for free. Head to oracle.com/formula. That's oracle.com/formula. All right, Bob Varsha, I am thinking about what else we need to talk about here, and I think one of the big things is Lance Stroll, because he was potentially not even going to race today. And, he had that issue in the Spanish Grand Prix, and he didn't race. And it was announced later that he had re-aggravated his wrist injury back from 2023, I believe it was.
Right.
And they say he had a procedure, and we're all assuming that was some sort of surgical procedure. But when he showed up in the paddock, he had just a couple of Band-Aids. It almost looked like they were more than just a regular Band-Aid, but they were around his wrist. And look, it's his home race. He's Canadian, and I saw lots of fans in the coverage over the weekend so far with during practice with his number and the Aston Martin green jerseys and hats. And and I want to play this clip because he was very un-Lance Stroll-like in his interview after qualifying.
I think the car was not too bad. Just unlucky with a bit of the red flag. We were strong on the soft at the beginning of the session, and then we only allocated mediums just because we knew that they were could maybe be better, but it needed multiple laps, and at the end of Q1, only one time to do one lap on the medium, so just not generating the right amount of temperature on that tire.
Long race ahead tomorrow. From what you learned about the car when you've had a bit of fuel in it, you optimistic about your chances?
I don't know. I mean, it's going to be hard from the back, but we'll see.
Yeah, I just thought it was nice to hear him do kind of a normal interview.
That's a wealth of information from Lance Stroll.
I know, it really is. Well, Bob, why don't we try to take advantage of the fact that Chris Medland is on television right now and have the Varsha grid right now? I'm sure that means...
No, you know that.
Oh, my gosh. I wasn't watching the chat. Chris is back.
Yeah, I want...
It's planned. It's always planned. I just wait for Bob to be mentioned, and I'm like, right, now's my chance.
Yeah, I wanted Chris to go before me because I didn't want him taking any of my nuggets and going out there on television and everybody saying, "Oh, look how much Chris Medland knows."
Oh, there you go. Hey, if you're just listening and you're not watching on YouTube, Bob Varsha is very. He takes this very good. In other words, he's not offended at all. He's smiling, and I know that.
Oh, heck no!
It's become
You
part.
just to wait for the messages I get afterwards. The texts I get post race are just.
It's such a waste of time. It's very childish. Really annoying.
You and Rachel Brooks and everybody, all the females have been getting vile feedback, and now Chris Medland is too. Don't take it too seriously.
Well, take it away, Bob. Give us the grid.
Okay. Well, I was telling Jon Massengale before the start of the show that I did my recent lecture cruise to Monaco, and the captain of the ship, a guy named Tom Schofield, seems to think it's just hilarious to wait till I start talking about Formula One and we're going to Monaco. And then he gets on there on this PA system, as though we've spotted an iceberg out ahead of us and starts riling up the crowd right in the middle of my comments.
He must be a fan of the show.
Well, yeah, or that I have some kind of reputation as a punching bag or something because everybody likes to interrupt me. Okay, let's talk about the race. The starting grid. Row 1, P1, George Russell, Mercedes. The fourth different pole sitter in 10 races thus far. The Stealth Brit emerged from a Q3 session that saw 4 different provisional pole sitters in the final 24 seconds. It's the 6th pole of his career and the first time he's taken a second pole at the same circuit, having sat on pole here last year. P2, Max Verstappen of the Red Bull, making it the same front row as a year ago when Max won from P2. But he cannot risk another penalty point on his record or face a one-race ban. He says he's not going to change the way he drives. We'll see. Row 2, P3, Oscar Piastri in the McLaren. The championship leader starts from the one position in the top 2 rows that he has never won from. An upgraded front wing on the McLaren hasn't appeared to have helped the papaya cars all that much. P4, Kimi Antonelli of Mercedes. I really feel for him this weekend. Shaded by teammate Russell's pole, the young Italian has only gridded higher in his short career once when he was 3rd at Miami, but he has not scored a point in the last 3 races. He'll want to change that. Row 3, P5, Lewis Hamilton in the Ferrari. The 7-time champ matches the best start of his brief Ferrari career. It's also the highest grid position for Ferrari here in Montreal since 2022. P6, Fernando Alonso in the Aston Martin. Top 6 in the last 4 Grand Prix for Fast Freddy and his 4th consecutive in Canada. This after he described the car in Q2 as, quote, impossible to drive. Row 4, P7, Lando Norris and the other McLaren. And this is weird. Drivers starting P7 here in Montreal since 2000.
It's time for me to interrupt you, as always, but I tried to time it well because you mentioned Fast Freddy, Fernando Alonso, here in P6, and I've got Andy Cowell, the team principal of Aston Martin. Andy, where did that performance from Fernando come from?
Well, I think ever since we did the upgrade at Imola, Fernando's managed to get all the way through to Q3 every single event, and we're beginning to understand the car and therefore be able to help. Lance would have been up here as well if we hadn't been for the red flag in Q1 as well. So yeah, that was just a challenge of getting into the rhythm.
Well, if we then look at that being not a flash in the pan with the advances you've made with the upgrade, what can you do today in the race? Starting with Fernando, like up here in the top 6, got a Ferrari alongside you, which can be a bit hit and miss for race pace.
Yeah, it's going to be tricky. I think we're on the good side of the track, but there's a McLaren just a few meters behind us, and a Ferrari a few meters ahead. But Fernando's a formidable driver. Yeah,
And from Lance's point of view, obviously, like you say, out of position at the back of the field here, but he's always gone well at this track. I think he's only failed to score once.
Yeah, he knows the track well, and like you say, gives us the opportunity to try a slightly different approach. Often safety cars here as well. The barriers are very unforgiving.
No fitness issues for Lance either. Is Rich all okay?
No, he's all okay. He's bounced back wonderfully.
Great stuff. Thank you very much. Good luck today, Andy.
Thank you very much, Chris and Andy. Picking up with row 4, Lando Norris. And as I said, this is a weird stat. Drivers starting P7 here in Montreal since 2000 have won twice. And that's more often than those that started 3rd, 4th, and 5th combined. But Norris admitted to making mistakes on his hot lap and has only 2 podiums from outside the top 6 in his career. P8, Charles Leclerc in the Ferrari, out-qualified by Hamilton for the first time, and yet 8th is Leclerc's highest start in Montreal since 2002. Row 5, P9, Alex Albon for Williams, brought out the red flag when his engine cover basically exploded on the long waterside straightaway. That was just a bizarre moment. But he recovered and was the first of 3 drivers to benefit from a 3-place grid penalty to Isaac Hadjar for impeding Carlos Sainz, and that moved him up 1 place from last season's grid. P10, Franco Colapinto for Alpine. Rumors are saying the Argentine is racing for his seat, and he responded with his best grid position yet for the French team, despite being caught out by Albon's red flag. Row 6, P11, Nico Hülkenberg in the Sauber, his highest starting position since China, round 2 of the season, and is coming off a season best.
Bob, I'm back again to interrupt you. This time I've got James Vowles alongside me. And James, we're behind Alex Albon's car on the grid. Is this where you expect it to be, or with the way this weekend started and how strong you've been here in the past, do you think you might get a bit further up?
I think Friday was a stronger day, definitely, than we did on Saturday. I mean, Carlos, really unfortunate with being blocked, but he should have been right here up the top 10. And I think the reality is 8th to 9th would have been the acceptable, but I think I expected more from our car. We didn't quite get it all together in qualifying. So hopefully in the race today, the car's faster.
Yeah, is there a reason you think for it? I mean, we saw the issue with the engine cover yesterday. Is there any reason for that causing you some trouble?
There's always a reason for everything. So engine cover, I think we found where that fault lay. We made a modification a few races ago. They were weak in an area. That's been reinforced. That won't happen again. In terms of performance, all the change from Friday was more wind, rotated wind, and 6 degrees of temperature. So where exactly that's causing the problem, not sure yet, but we need to go into that.
Okay, well, the anthem's about to start. So quickly, where are you going to finish with your 2 cars today?
Somewhere between 6th to 15th. And you're welcome.
Thank you, James.
I wish you'd asked him about his test run recently in Nigel Mansell's all singing Dancing Williams from years ago. But that was cool. And you know, I'm going to start writing a book just to see if Chris Medland interrupts me while I'm writing. Anyway,
guarantee it.
It'll be a better book if you're there, Chris. Row 6, Nico Hülkenberg in the Sauber, his highest starting position since China, round 2 of the season. And I think I already mentioned he was 5th 2 weeks ago in Spain. 12 is Isaac Hadjar for Racing Bulls. Woulda, coulda, shoulda started 9th, but for his 3-spot penalty, which is where he started 3 times in 4 races coming to Canada, that being 9th, of course. Row 7, P13, Ollie Behrman for Haas. It's an all-Haas row celebrating the American team's 200th Grand Prix. More importantly, Behrman out-qualified teammate Esteban Ocon for the 4th time in 2025. 14th, of course, is Ocon and the other Haas. Not what he had hoped for, but dead on the Frenchman's seasonal qualifying average of 14th. Row 8, P15, Gabriel Bortoleto in the Sauber, missed advancing to Q2 by just 0.007 of a second and out-qualified by teammate Hülkenberg 6-4 on the season thus far. P16, Carlos Sainz and Williams unable or unwilling or both to describe his feelings to an interviewer after being knocked out in Q1 for the 2nd straight race, something that hadn't happened to the Spaniard since the 2023 season finale. Row 9, P17, Lance Stroll in the Aston Martin, back for his home race after his withdrawal from Spain 2 weeks ago, much to the relief of the local promoter, I'm sure. His 6th Q1 exit this season in 10 races, but he has scored points from outside the top 15 in 3 races here in Montreal. P18, Liam Lawson for Racing Bulls, the worst grid position for the Kiwis since round 2 in China, which, of course, was his last race with Red Bull. Row 10, Pierre Gasly, 19th for Alpine, a real head scratcher for a guy who has 4 top 10 starts in the previous 9 races. That French squad has started a car last in 2 of the last 3 races. Maybe the team was watching Le Mans on the telly. I don't know.
Yeah.
P20, Yuki Tsunoda for Red Bull, qualified P11 on time, but was dropped 10 grid spots for passing Oscar Piastri under the red flag brought out by the McLaren driver's wall smack in free practice 3. There you have it.
Awesome. All right. Well, good timing. Chris, if you don't have anybody, we're going to go to break.
I have an update actually from the grid for Franco Colapinto fans, which is that a lot of work is going on to the front end of his car right now and has been throughout that national anthem that they've just played. And it looks like it was brake related. They had the drums off and the hubs off, the nose is off the car as well. They're putting it back together now. I think the car will be fine to start, but the FIA have been watching it very closely. And Flavio Briatori's just been wandering around staring at it himself, not really talking to anyone about it. But it looks like I'm going to try and get a thumbs up or a thumbs down from a mechanic here. I got ignored. Yeah, thumbs up. We got the thumbs up.
All right.
The car's going to be ready, it looks like. But
They're going to make the grid or a pit lane?
They're on the grid. They should be fine in that sense. But it's been busier than they'd have liked, I think, is the way to put it. So if Franco has any issues on the formation lap or early in the race, then it's something that had manifested itself before the race started.
Brilliant stuff, Chris. Getting live updates straight from the mechanics.
How about one more live update? We'll try and get one.
You got it.
Ayo Komatsu. Ayo, we're just walking down the grid now. Your car's slightly a bit further back than this. What do you think you can achieve today from outside the top 10?
Depends how the race turns out. 1 stop, 2 stop. Is this hotter temperature? What the graining is like? What the overheating is like? So there's lots of variables. But our race pace on Friday was good. So for sure, we just try our best to get the most cars into points.
Now, even with the penalties, I think you start together in 13th and 14th, if I remember rightly. Does that mean you kind of split strategies and one might come off, one doesn't? Or do you think you're actually quick enough that you just go for the optimal strategy with both cars?
We might split.
Just you might split. That's all you're going to say. Okay. Wow. Okay.
Way to go, Ayo.
So, well, who gets the best one then?
But the thing is, the best one is difficult. Obviously, there's a conventional one, but then alternative ones. If nothing happens, it's always slower. But coming from 13, 14, you do need something extra to get into points, right? So, yeah, normally the leading car gets the conventional one.
Well, so I guess you're hoping something happens with those front 2 today. I got a smile and a nod. Hey, good luck. Thank you.
All right. Fantastic, Chris. All right. Well, let's get our last break in. And when we come back, we'll be just a few minutes from the start of the Canadian Grand Prix right after this. All right, I'm going to go back to Le Mans just a little bit because Robert Kubica, Bob.
Kubica.
Kubica, sorry. It's been a while since I've said his name, actually. That was one of the most astonishing performances by a driver at Le Mans ever. I mean, 59 laps he did, most of that without his drink bottle, apparently. And he did 43% of the driving, 166 laps in total. Amazing.
And that's for a guy who has a only semi-usable right arm.
Yeah, exactly.
After his rally crash. Good gosh. And boy, the ties to Montreal are mind-boggling. This is where he won his first race, as did Lewis Hamilton and so on and so on. But this is also where he had one of the most bodacious crashes you will ever see. Look up Robert Kubica at Montreal. I can't remember the year. He was in a Williams BMW, as I recall. And he just blew that thing to smithereens and walked away.
I think you need to look up the term bodacious. I think that's supposed to be reserved for, never mind. I'm going to get myself in trouble. Hey, Chris, brilliant job, buddy. That was great, man. You got the mechanic with a real-time update, and then Ayo Komatsu with his 200th race and everything. Fantastic.
Yeah, what I stupidly did was I raised my thumb with the hands that had the mic in it. So I couldn't then say anything while waiting for him to respond. And when he didn't straight away, I had to switch hands. And he looked back at me like, what are you asking? But
it worked.
Yeah, that's Francis from Alpine, who's a very good guy, big character. Most people might have seen him on the Alpine social media. He was very much in the zone, but he gave me a nod. So, and the car, I'm stood looking at it right now. It's looking back to normal at this point. So I think they're fine to go.
Good.
That's great. Man, that explosion, for lack of a better phrase, was awesome. I wanted to. All right, here we go. Coming back.
Hello to everyone. This is Gunther Steiner. This is Speed City.
Welcome back to the fastest hour in radio, Speed City.
All right, welcome back. We're going to get you the last 8 or 9 minutes before the race here, but I want to talk a little bit about what Chris was just talking about. Alex Albon's engine cover blew off all over the track, and they said, I was listening to the team radio, and they said it ballooned up. So essentially all that means is air got underneath the cover and just blew it off. But man, didn't it explode in dramatic fashion. But there was a really great, Casey, link 2 is what I want to use. There was a great tweet from Craig Scarborough. If you don't follow him on Twitter, you should, because he's Scarbs Tech. And when he took the photo and he did an analysis, he identified all of the parts under the engine cover, which we don't get to see very often. And it was pretty cool. And then, everything from the air box, the air filter, the intake plenum, the cooling ducts, the roll bar, you name it. And I thought that was great. It was good stuff. And then he also, his second tweet was awesome because he tweeted another one where it's just under the engine cover was all the Duracell batteries, like in your remote for your television or whatever. I thought that was great. Good stuff from Craig. Yeah. He's a very good follow, by the way.
That was just a bizarre moment there. I mean, that shows you what kind of forces are at work here. All it took was that airflow to get under that thing, and it didn't just rip off; it exploded.
Yeah. What were you gonna say, Chris?
And also, it shows you how thin the coverings are on these cars.
Right.
Because we see them and think of them as strong units, but I've seen when they take an engine cover off how flimsy they are. They're so thin, trying to keep them as lightweight as possible, but they also need to allow heat to dissipate and yet still be strong enough to deal with those forces you're talking about. So it's remarkable bit of engineering, and a lot of it is obviously carbon fiber in the terms of the weave that they have for it. So it was quite a good display of that, although I'm sure Williams and Mercedes, as the power unit supplier, will be a little bit put out at the imagery that people got, and then Craig helpfully showing everyone exactly what was under there. But great for us.
Thank you.
I wanted to add a little bit of colour here, actually, because I'm in the pit lane. And we've got Pierre Gasly starting in the pit lane alongside Liam Lawson. And I saw Gasly come out of his garage into his pit box to do his normal pre-race ritual that he would do on the grid, where he crouches down, so he's nearly touching the floor. And I believe I'm right in saying that it's a bit of an homage to Antoine Hubert, who was killed at Spa in that Formula 2 crash. And he crouches down and he does, kind of thinks about him, says something, and then does a little bit of a gesture before he gets back up and gets into the zone to get the car. And he just did that, in the pit lane. So a little bit strange because he was on his own doing it rather than where he normally is next to his car on the grid. But he still was going through the same ritual.
Interesting.
He lays flowers at Spa every year for Hubert.
Oh, does he? Liam does?
He does. Yeah, he goes up there.
That's
not Liam. No, Gasly.
I'm sorry.
Pierre Gasly.
Yeah.
He was a bit of a mentor to Antoine Hubert because obviously now he's racing for Alpine, and Antoine was coming through the junior program with what was Renault at the time. But they'd raced together and they knew each other very well. They were good friends. They weren't actually a million miles apart in terms of age. Antoine was one of the older guys in the junior categories rather than some of these 17, 18-year-olds you have coming through. But he was a real talent. But I just thought it was a nice touch to see. You pick up on some of the processes that some of the drivers are going through, and they get disrupted if they're starting in the pit lane, and they have to do something a little bit different.
Yeah. Hey, I'm really excited to ask both of you this question. Bob, because of your experience in Formula One, and Chris, because you're real-time access right now. But I want to talk about why Derek Warwick was suspended as an FIA steward for this race. Chris, I want to start with you.
Yeah, I think, to be honest, it's actually quite a simple one and a marginally boring one. He didn't say anything outrageous or give an opinion that was a problem. It was just the fact he spoke at all. He was coming into a race weekend where he's going to be a steward, and the FIA have told the driver stewards that they want them to basically consider when they make media appearances and give their opinion, because it's got to make sure it's compatible with the role of being a steward and having to make judgment calls on drivers. And essentially a PR company that he is partnered with, and Johnny Herbert used to be partnered with as well, circulated a load of quotes, which has happened a number of times. It's normally attributed to a gambling company that wants some coverage. They just email them around to all sorts of media outlets trying to get coverage, talking about topics of the day. So Derek Warwick was talking about Max's penalty in Barcelona and the incident with George. He's also talking talking about other drivers. I think Yuki Tsunoda got a mention in there. And it's just because they're looking for different outlets to pick up these quotes who are just looking desperately for any sort of story to populate a website. And essentially just shouldn't really be doing it. He doesn't need to that much. Admittedly, it's an unpaid role to be the FIA driver steward, so that doesn't help. But the timing of that ahead of the race weekend that he was going to be officiating just didn't sit great after Johnny Herbert was actually, I say sacked. He left the FIA for similar indiscretions, doing that sort of job while he was also a driver steward, and the FIA said it wasn't compatible. So his timing was bad. And it's why it's a one-race suspension as such. He'll be back doing the job in Austria. They're just saying, like, hey, that's not great timing to do that. So we can't really have you officiating this weekend.
Yeah, Bob,
yeah, it wasn't really a punishment. It was more like, well, you said this, so the optics are not good if we let you be a steward this weekend. Personally, I think it was a little bizarre because, I mean, he was basically supportive, as I understand it, of the decision of the stewards in Spain. You know, he was linking arms with those stewards saying, yeah, they made the right call. So, I don't know what the fuss is, but now that we have new rules and the FIA president is a complete authoritarian, we'll never know.
Yeah, and I agree with you 100% on that. A complete authoritarian.
Yeah, I think it's one of those where just because the statement came out and said he's been suspended, and it's unusual to have that, everyone went crazy for it. And in reality, they were careful. They didn't say he said anything wrong or that he's done anything bad in that sense. Because Martin Brundle came out and defended him heavily, and it was just I almost had to say, don't worry, they're not. No one's here judging him for what he said. It's just it's fair enough to say that's bad timing. I think everyone understood that. So hopefully it's one that will be a storm in a teacup. It does bring me on to the fact we should have permanently paid stewards, driver stewards and others. But that's a whole nother topic for a whole nother time. We're about to go racing.
Yeah, we just got about 2.5 minutes. I just want to talk about the top stories. We've talked about Russell and Verstappen on the front row, a little bit about Piastri, but we got Piastri in third and Norris down in seventh. So we got to watch McLaren's and see, we got the championship leaders in both drivers and constructors. Antonelli, the other Mercedes, in fourth. We got to keep an eye on him, see how he does. Lewis Hamilton in fifth with his, not so exciting season, really a disappointing season so far. But Alonso in sixth. That's to me one of the most interesting one. That car, like we heard from the horse's mouth, the upgrades have worked. So that ought to be fun to watch and see if Alonso can get his second race in the points this season. And Bob, you brought up Colapinto. He's just not done enough. He's kind of on the bubble, right?
Well, yeah, we talk about it week in and week out when you have the likes of, Liam Lawson losing his seat at Red Bull after 2 races. Yuki Tsunoda now being on the hot seat after 8 races with the varsity team, if you will. There's just no time. There is too much scrutiny, too much at stake, and these drivers are just not getting enough time. And right now it looks like Colapinto, who admittedly does bring a lot of sponsorship to the team, is also on the hot seat because they need him to score points, just like Red Bull needs Tsunoda to score points. It doesn't matter. You don't need to win races. You just need to add to our points total in the constructors.
Yep.
And, there's just not a lot of time for these guys.
All right. Speaking of not a lot of time, it's time for our predictions. Let's
Good
start.
segue.
Yes. Thank you, sir. Hey, let's start with you, Chris Medland. Predictions.
Ooh, came to me first, did we? I'm going to go Verstappen, Piastri, Hamilton. Why not?
Oh, where did Russell go in that? Oh, okay. I'll go next, Bob. I'll give you the honors. I'm going to say George Russell wins it, followed by Piastri and Antonelli, the other Mercedes. How about that? I'm predicting a cold front coming through. All right, Bob, go ahead.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I was going to agree with Chris, but that absolutely cannot happen. So I'm going to say Max Verstappen wins, Oscar Piastri is second, and Lando Norris is third.
Come back.
I think that's a good shout. Yeah, that's a good shout.
He showed some speed, didn't he, Chris, earlier in the weekend? Lando did. So there you go.
Really did.
All right, guys, strong. We are done. Thanks, Bob Varsha. Thanks, Chris Medland. Thanks to everyone for tuning in, however you tuned in. But stay right here for the race and then come back right after for our post-race show. Could be spicy. Thanks for tuning in.